made headlines again, this time after a whistleblower named John Barnett was found dead in his car in a Charleston hotel parking lot. The Charleston County coroner confirmed his death, reporting that the 62-year-old died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound on March 9th. The police are investigating. Now, John Barnett had worked for Boeing for 32 years until his retirement in 2017. Days before his death, he had been giving evidence in a whistleblower lawsuit against the company. In 2019, Barnett told the BBC that he had seen workers under pressure, purportedly fitting substandard parts onto aircraft. He also alleged that the lower quality work on the aircraft was because of executives who wanted to speed up production. Now, Barnett was based in Louisiana, but he died in South Carolina, where he had traveled to testify in a Boeing-related defamation case. He claimed that Boeing had intentionally damaged his reputation and his career as retribution for raising concerns about safety issues on the Boeing product line.
Meanwhile, dozens of passengers were injured on board a Boeing-made plane flying from Sydney to Auckland, New Zealand on Monday, according to the Associated Press. LATAM Airlines said in a statement that there was a technical event during which the flight caused a strong movement. The Boeing 787-9 Dreamliner landed at Auckland Airport as scheduled and was due to continue on to Santiago, Chile. Now, about 50 people were treated at the scene for mostly mild injuries. 13 of those were taken to a hospital.
So we have been covering a number of these Boeing incidents and reporting, including guests we've had on the show, talking about some of the decisions that have been made in upper management that seem to prioritize paying money out to stockholders, doing these stock buybacks, rather than investing in the company in ways that have caused a lot of problems, and outsourcing as well production to companies that don't typically make airline parts and don't have the same kind of safety protocols in place to ensure that their specifications are up to standard. So, for example, one example that was given by William McGee, an airline longtime expert, was that a part manufacturer had been outsourced to a surf shop, for instance. In this instance, people are raising their eyebrows because he's someone who has, since 2017, been pursuing this whistleblower claim against Boeing and was also traveling at the time of his death to defend himself or to pursue a defamation claim, claiming that the airline had been retaliating against him in the first instance. People have been pointing out that 75% of suicides tend to happen at home, that there are huge financial implications for a company like Boeing that is suffering a great deal in the media from a lot of these events, like the one that you just described happening in New Zealand. They're making headlines for all of the wrong reasons. People have deep safety concerns about flying in the first place, and Boeing is now becoming synonymous with trouble in the air.
Sure. Now, obviously, the official ruling here is suicide, as you said, self-inflicted gunshot wound in his car. Reporting from the Washington Post says, obviously, the process he's been through is very stressful, has caused medical issues for him. He's been at it a long while. So, while I obviously understand that Boeing wants to avoid bad press and that this is an inconvenient court matter for them, it's being, presented as a suicide, and that seems perfectly plausible to me as well. We have been talking a lot about issues on the plane. Remember that
the door just falling off. Yeah, blowing off, and passengers sitting next to the door, had they not been strapped in with their safety belts, it could have been a fatal accident. Yeah,
which would have been, so there have been a handful of, I looked at the statistics of deaths on airplanes under those circumstances. There have been no airplane crashes in the U.S. in a decade, which is a pretty sterling record. It remains the case that flying is, one of the safest, absolutely safest forms of transportation. It's way, 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 way safer than cars. We have, tens of thousands of car deaths every year. So I don't want to scare people away from flying unnecessarily. It is a
right, but that's not the question. The question is whether or not they want to fly on Boeing. And Boeing in particular has been ground zero for a lot of these incidents. Remember, just in January, the jet nose fell off. The jet nose wheel fell off before a plane took off. And I think that it's not just whether or not someone literally dies. In this New Zealand incident, Dozens of people were taken to the hospital. Moreover, treated for their injuries on site. And moreover, they're deeply inconvenienced. People are trying to get places. And the fact that you have to switch planes because the plane you're on broke, or have to reroute because the plane you're on's door flew off while you're flying thousands of miles over the ground, is a significant issue for a lot of people. And it's a significant issue enough for Boeing that they are trying to do damage control. And we should also cover at another time the millions of dollars in lobbying money that they've got put toward various politicians in an effort to try to keep this kind of stuff under wraps. Remember, this is also somewhat of a monopoly issue. Boeing supplies a huge number of airplanes in this industry, and there's a kind of a collective action problem here, where if Boeing goes down, are there people who can fill in and provide alternate machines for all of these airlines?
Right. Well,
it's a tough situation.
The last thing we want to see is a shortage in available planes. I think most people's experience with flying these days is that it's way too expensive and inconvenient, and we wouldn't want to shut off the supply of planes because those would exacerbate those problems. I've talked a lot about the, in my view, very annoying requirements for pilots to get a certain amount of training hours in the air, which is like twice as much in the US as it is in Europe or even in Canada, where there's no evidence that it creates more safety. It just creates more of a bottleneck for hiring pilots. Of course, we want the planes to be safe. We don't want to have them start crashing all the time.
This isn't pilot error. None of what we've described today is pilot error. And notably, the FAA audit of Boeing 737 MAX planes, which is the plane that's been really central to a lot of these accidents, found dozens of issues. It failed 39 out of 89 FAA audits, this one plane. So at what point are there going to be consequences for Boeing and some intervention for public safety before we get to a place where we're talking about how many people died in an airline crash? Remember, a bunch of these planes were grounded earlier this year, I think in January, when one of these incidents first happened. It's not the first time this particular kind of plane has been grounded. But I think the question is, are they going to be able to get to the root cause of some of these issues, at least as described by whistleblowers like the one who just passed away, who's pointing to management decisions and basically trying to cut costs and prioritize shareholder value? Or is that kind of root problem going to be addressed, or are we just going to keep grounding planes, doing inspections, and going on as usual until there is a more significant tragedy?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we will continue to pay attention to that, and we'll have more Rising right after this.